guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Erin and I do mostly budgeting videos like the one you're about to see here. Technically budgeting, but it is related to budgeting, and I just wanted to go over a really simple process to make your own budget tracker. So you can use this to track debt, you can use it to track savings, or you can use it to track basically anything in your life that you want to color in, keep progress of, use it kind of as a gauge of progress. Trackers are really fun because they definitely give that visual aspect to whatever it is that you're doing. I'm definitely a visual person, and when I see this, it makes paying down debt a lot more satisfying for me. Not that paying down debt isn't already satisfying, but you guys know what I mean. Like, as you make those payments, just as like a little reward to yourself and a little visual reminder, you can color in these boxes and it'll show you just how far you've come. And it'll also give you a reminder and some motivation of how far you have to go. This is a simple credit card debt payoff chart that I made. And I have another one and I want to add it to this book because I like to keep them just for archival purposes. That way I can look back and I can say, wow, that was a pretty good thing that you did. Some basic scrapbook paper. These tabs are by Avery. I have them linked down below if you're interested in something like that. They are repositionable. So this is my Christmas club funds, and basically these four are my sinking funds. So I decided I don't want to just have envelopes for them. Envelopes are great and they are fun in their own right to keep track of things, but also I really like to have that visual again. Now this is just really extra and it just looks a little bit kind of chaotic, but I just wanted it to look super cheerful, just really fun to look at. So here I have a goal of $1,500 that I want to save up. And as you can see, I have increments of $25. So depending on what your goal is, what your total amount is, that's how you can figure out what you have room for as far as, can I do $25 blocks or do I have to do $100 blocks because I don't have room for everything? It just depends on your total, and I'll get into that in a second. So this is my emergency fund. It looks a little bit more basic, a little bit more minimal, but this is because I have so many blocks to put on this page. So these are all in $100 increments, but I am going to 18,000. So that means I have 180, let's see, 18,000 divided by 100. Yeah, 180 blocks that I had to configure. So if you look at our dogs sheet, we're saving to $1,000, and here I can do $10 increments because my value is only $1,000. That means I can do smaller amounts and have the room for it. So hopefully I can explain this in a way that makes sense. You will need a calculator, or you might not. If you're good at doing math in your head, you won't. You'll need some paper, so you can use any type of paper that your heart desires. And I'm gonna just zoom in just a bit. You can use a spiral bound notebook, you can use regular paper like this, copy paper, whatever. This is just something that I pulled out of a tool notebook, and it's 8.5 by 11, so it's the same size as copy paper, but it also happens to be the size that fits into my big happy plan. You'll also need a ruler. You don't have to use it, but I do recommend it because when you're making the columns, you want them to be pretty precise, especially if you're making several. So you want to make sure that everything is straight and that your tracker ends up being, nice to look at. Let's just say that you have a $10,000 debt that you want to pay, and you want to do increments of 100. That means that you need 4 rows. So one thing that's really handy to know is how many spaces you have between your lines. So start out with the very first line up here. All right, so the very top line, and then finish all the way down here at your last line. So you don't want to go to the border, but whatever your border is, but just the last line that you have line space between. So for me, this tool paper, there are 37 line spaces. That means I can have a maximum of 37 blocks down. No matter how many I do across, and no matter how wide they are, how narrow they are, I can only have 37 blocks this way. I think that that's really helpful information to have. Well, it's actually very helpful information to have, because if you're doing something that requires you to have a column that goes top to bottom and you have to do several columns across, you're going to have to know that number in your head, because it's going to impact the number of blocks that you actually end up making. Let's go ahead and figure that we are doing, let's do $10,000. Do 10,000 divided by 100 if you wanted to color off every time you made a payment or a savings of $100. So you would need 100 blocks. You know that you have 37 down, and the spacing across, I use the width of a ruler just because I think it keeps it nice and neat and streamlined. All right, so if you need 100 blocks and you know you have 37 spaces down, you can divide 100 by 37 and know that you can do this in 3 columns. So if you have 2.7, you always want to round up because you need that extra space. But you have much more room, so you don't have to squeeze everything into 3 columns. So 3 columns across would be like basically here, here, and here. So you would have this whole side of the paper that you could actually use that would be empty, or you can use it for decorating. So maybe you do want that much empty space, but if you don't, if you want to spread it out more and you want it to, you know, be a little bit more centered on your page, you don't have to use that 37 down. Let's say you only want to use 30 of it. So that leaves you some room up here or some room down here. So let's do 100 blocks divided by 30. So that means you need 3.5 columns. So basically you need 4 columns. So that's kind of where the math comes in and it gets a little bit tricky. But we're going to do something very simple, and we're going to use 100 divided by 25, which means we need 4 columns. So we're going to start out there just to make things really simple and streamlined just for the first one, and then you can get into far more complicated calculations and configurations later on. So we're gonna count, I would say, let's say I want to leave about this much space on top. So I'm going to count 25 down. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25. So again, you want to make sure that you're counting 25 spaces between the lines. You're not counting the lines, you're counting the spaces. So let's make our first line right there. So we're going to do 1 to 25. All right. And then what we're going to do, I have to flip it over just because I'm going to make this column exactly the width of my ruler. And there's my first column. But we're making 4 of these because we need 100 blocks. So I'm just going to move it over just a bit, and I'm just eyeballing this. You could be more precise if you want to, but it's all up to you. All right, and this is my last column. All right, now these are not perfect by any means, and they are leaning. You decide that you have to make this a little bit more exact, but this is just for process purposes. It's just kind of the method that you can use, the most simple method to create yourself a chart. All right, so let's count this then. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. So you have 25 blocks times 4, which will give you 100. So basically now what you want to do is you want to take your first amounts up here. Actually, if you want it to end in 0, if you want your last block to be 0, you would write 10,000 above here. I don't want my last block to be 0 because that's not a block that I really need to color in. So if you're coloring in increments of 100, I kind of want my last block to be $100. And when I color that in, I know that I have achieved that. So you can write, you know, goal here at the bottom and 0. because we're paying debt down with this, I think we said. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to start out up here, and you're going to write $10,000 in your first block, and then you're going to write 9,900 because we're doing increments of 100. And then you're going to do 9,800 and so on and so forth. So I'm going to fill this all in, and I will be right back. So here's the tracker with all the numbers plugged in, and the reason why I did this is just to show you how it does end up. So you're going to end up with your last payment of $100, and then if you want, you can make this as big or as decorated and ornate as you want to celebrate you reaching zero after that payment. So that's basically the easiest way to do a tracker. And now you can go ahead and decorate, and you can make this look as awesome and as extra as you want. One thing I did want to bring up is that your brain kind of goes on autopilot when you're doing this, and so I thought I made a mistake here and I didn't, and then I started to write 3,200 here, which I don't know why. But if you don't want to make mistakes and you want to take the extra time, you can use the calculator. So 10,000 minus 100 minus 100 minus 100. And you can do that every time you're going to make a block. Now, do you need to do that? No. Now, if your blocks are in increments that are a little bit more involved, and more difficult to figure out, the calculator may be helpful. But the only reason why I suggest that is because you don't want to make a mistake up here, not realize it until you're over here, and then think, okay, now I have to do this entire thing all over again. That's really frustrating, and I've actually ended up in that position because sometimes my trackers aren't as clean as $100 increments, and I have made them in all kinds of different variations. And when you're into different denominations and things like that that aren't as round and whole as $100 increments, it's easy to make mistakes. I suggest just taking your time with it, doing whatever you think is best. And if you're somebody who wants to come back to this tracker very often and you want to color in more often, you could actually do this at increments of 50 very easily. You would need 200 blocks, I believe, so $10,000 divided by 50. You would need 200 blocks. That's just the way you figure it out. Take your starting amount. So let's say you have $5,000 that you need to pay down, and you want to have $25 blocks. You're going to do 5,000 divided by 25. That still means you need 200 blocks. Let's say you have 8,700 and you want to pay down by 50. So 8,700 divided by 50. You need 174 blocks. So that's just the formula that you use. It's super easy, and the only other really crucial information is how many blocks you have from top to bottom of your page, because the more blocks you need, the more of that space that you're going to have to use. So let's say you have a debt of $18,625 and you want to do increments of, let's say, $75. You would need 248.3 blocks. Really, you would need about 200, well, you'd need 249. So you'd have to figure out, okay, let's say you need 249 blocks and you have 37 spaces down. So let's take 249, that's the number of blocks you need, divided by 37. And you would be at 6.7 or 7. So that means you need 7 columns across, and you would need them almost top to bottom. It's just a little bit of figuring, but hopefully your numbers, you can make them very round or, as easy as possible. Let's say you have your starting isn't $10,000, but rather it's $10,256, okay? But you still want to do increments of 100, but you don't want to start figuring at this rate. So here, instead of writing 10,000, go ahead and write 10,256 and still have 9,900 be your first block. So 10,256 minus 9,900. So you would need to pay down $356 before you could color in your first block. Let's say this is your starting balance. Okay, so you owe $1 million, $1.4 million to a credit card company. And honestly, if I would have kept my spending habits the way they were going, that would have been me. All right, so let's say you owe $1.4 million. All right, so instead of writing 10,000 here, you're gonna write $1.4 million. All right, but you still want your increments to start out at 9,900 and be in blocks of 100. So let's just do 1.4 million, all right, minus 9,900. So you would need to pay 1.3 million down almost to get here until you could color your first block. Now I'm being silly, I'm being ridiculous, but you get the idea. So whatever your starting point is, you can have your first block start out wherever you want it to be in order for it to be a round number. So this could be $10,021 and you would just have to pay down to 9,900 before you got. So 10,021 minus 9,900. So you'd have to be 121 instead of 100 to get to your first block. I think this is pretty much as simple as it gets. So I hope this helps you and I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, you can leave them down below, but basically, you know, do whatever you think is the most motivational to you and the most satisfying. You definitely don't have to fit your tracker on one page. You could have a 6-page tracker if you wanted to. You can have a whole notebook tracker. If you want to color down a block for every dollar that you put toward your debt, you would need 10,000 blocks. It can be as involved or as detailed as you want it to be, or it can be clean and simple, something like this. This is more my style. I like to keep things fairly minimal, but also very motivating. And I find that at a $10,000 valuation, if I had to pay that down to zero, I find that this is very motivating. Increments of 100, you know, you're working for it, you know, paying $100 each time isn't that easy, but you're working for it and you'll definitely get there. So it's very satisfying then to color down every time you hit $100, $100 reduction. So if you have any questions, like I said, please leave them down below. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, I would appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up. That really helps my channel. And if you haven't already subscribed, I would love if you stuck around and did so. And hopefully I'll see you guys in my next video. Take care.